Tibet, the rooftop of the world. One of the last untouched landscapes on the planet. Home to only the toughest, most resilient plants and animals. For generations, farmers, nomads and noblemen have struggled to cultivate this at times inhospitable land. And in doing so, they have created some of the most extraordinary dishes on earth. This is the story of the Tibetan people and how their culture and religion has been shaped by the food they eat. From the barren, wind-swept northern plains, where nothing grows, to a unique delicacy hidden in the fertile forests of the south. And in the heart of Tibet, a village that can only survive by eating one of the most sacred creatures to Buddhist beliefs. These Buddhist monks have set out at first light from their monastery. They're heading to a prayer meeting in the northern county of Nachu. The prayer meeting is a rare chance to socialize and, of course, to worship. These Tibetan prayer wheels are inscribed with mantras. One spin is equal to reciting the prayer. Nearly everyone in Tibet is Tibetan Buddhist, a religion combining Buddhism with their ancestors' spiritual beliefs. Like all Buddhists, they believe in reincarnation, and that the good or bad karma built up in this lifetime will determine the form your soul will take in the next. However, there is one Buddhist teaching that, if strictly followed, would make living on the Tibetan plateau impossible. Buddha advocated a vegetarian lifestyle, asking his followers, why must one creature eat another to live? But Tibet's cold and arid climate means little vegetation can grow here. And at 14,000 meters above sea level, even the simplest of tasks require large amounts of energy. There is, however, one source of food that can be found everywhere. So Buddhism in Tibet has adapted. The staple ingredients that form a Tibetan meal are referred to as the four treasures. They are sampa, a flour made from roasted barley, butter, black tea, and the meat from either yak or sheep. Called the four treasures because they are among the few types of food that can be cultivated at such high altitudes and are essential to human survival here in Tibet. However, one treasure above all finds its way into practically every aspect of Tibetan life. Religious tradition dictates that flowers are to be offered to statues of Buddha. However, in Tibet, they make offerings from butter in order to show respect. Because on this bleak plateau, flowers are very rare indeed. The Damjung Plains in central Tibet. Stretching over 10,000 square kilometers, this wild grassland is home to some of the hardiest animals on the planet. And little else. For humans to survive on this sparse, and unforgiving land, absolutely nothing can be wasted. Cheddar is married and has 2 young sons. On plains with no trees or shrubs, this is the only fuel they have. She comes from a long line of nomads who live on the open plains. They spend the summer months fattening up their livestock on the grasslands, before heading south to avoid the worst of the winter. Their tents, the only shelter they have on this flat and desolate landscape, are made from one of the few natural resources available: yak hair. It can take up to a year to hand spin each tent. They're surprisingly versatile and durable, strong enough to help protect from the bitter Siberian winds, yet thin and light enough to let in the sun. But yaks produce something else that is essential for Chura and her family's survival. Butter. Its high fat content not only gives them essential energy for life at such high altitudes, it also gives them a vital source of income. They will sell the butter along with dried meat and salt in markets as they move around. This hard, repetitive and daily work is normally left to the women in these nomadic tribes. Chura's husband, Khaesang, is preparing to slaughter one of his sheep. First, the animal must be given holy water to help it on its journey to the next life. Traditionally, butchering is undertaken by the men of the nomadic families. After fattening up their cattle and sheep over the summer, they are slaughtered in autumn and the meat salted and stored for the winter. He may not be educated, but here in the isolation of the Tibetan plains, Khaesang has the essential skills and knowledge to ensure his family's survival. Chura helps too. They must be careful to lose as little blood as possible. Khaesang gently removes the sheep's intestines, taking great care not to rupture it. He then blows hot water through the tubes to clean out any waste. The family is preparing to make guma, Tibetan blood sausages. The blood, along with the offal, is then mixed in with the flour. Every part of the sheep must be used and stored in preparation for the long journey in front of them. Once in the water, the blood congeals and the sausages start to darken. Cheddar pierces the skins to release the pressure. The heat from the stove is intense, but it's her job to stop the blood sausages from bursting. Whilst they are left to cook, Khaesang carves up the rest of the animal. The cold, windy and arid conditions here are ideal for drying out the meat. Along with the butter, it will be traded when the family eventually reaches market. Any spare will help see them through the harsh winter ahead, where temperatures can fall well below -30 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, her family can enjoy some home-cooked food. For these aren't just sausages. These are Tibetan blood sausages. And sausages don't come more nutritious and wholesome than these. In such a barren landscape, their methods of butchering, cooking and storing food are vital for survival. And as the cold autumn nights start to draw in and the sun sinks below the horizon, there's always more butter to be churned. Much of the nomads' produce will be sold here in the capital, Lhasa. And Chungsikan is the largest market in this vibrant city. It offers a diverse range of the freshest produce, and each day people flock here in their thousands. The surrounding streets are filled with an astounding array of shops, from large wholesalers who supply Lhasa's restaurants and businesses to small stalls such as Chamba's. Chamba sells yak butter that she buys from nomads. These massive blocks of essential fat are wrapped in yak hide. The hide is applied when wet and shrinks as it dries to form an airtight seal. Stored like this, the butter can last for up to a year. In Tibet, butter is not seen as an indulgence, but the essence of Tibetan life. They eat it, drink it, use it to oil their prayer wheels and soften their skin. Bartering here is common, and any excuse is used to lower the price. This pole that Chamba uses is an ingeniously simple weighing device. The butter is hooked on one end and a weight moved along marked grooves until the pole hovers horizontally. With no shortage of butter stalls to choose from, customers demand the best from the traders. There's just as much choice for Tibetans buying another of the four treasures, tsampa. As is customary in Tibet, nobody buys without trying. Anyone selling poor quality tsampa will not be in business for long. This tsampa gets the customer's seal of approval. This family-run shop has been here for generations. While most of their tea is grown locally, they also import it from India and Nepal. Due to the sheer volume Tibetans drink, tea is not bought in bags, but in large blocks. So coarse and unrefined, it will have to be soaked for 10 minutes before boiling. Guangming Gemchung Sweet Tea House in Lhasa is always buzzing, attracting a young, trendy crowd. Tibetan custom is to keep filling the teacup to the brim, as it's considered bad manners to leave guests with a half-empty cup. If you don't want any more tea, you must leave your cup full. In this tea shop, customers drink their tea with lots of milk and sugar. Whilst sweet tea is popular in Lhasa, it's not how most Tibetans drink it. Terslahunba Monastery in Shigatse is one of the grandest in all Tibet. These novice monks make tea on an industrial scale. In the kitchen, they carry huge urns filled with piping hot water. Here, they are brewing to a traditional recipe. After the tea has been boiled for half a day, it is then mixed, not with milk and sugar, but salt and butter. Lobsang is 17, and it's his responsibility to oversee the smooth churning of the butter tea. A role he takes very seriously. Now, one by one, the boys carry the urns of hot butter tea into the great hall. The result is a thick, gloopy mixture that has a soup-like consistency. Tibetans are known as voracious tea drinkers, downing cup after cup throughout the day. During prayer meetings, the butter tea is constantly flowing. But these monks cannot live off butter tea alone. Over 800 of them need to be fed. In these dimly lit passageways underneath the kitchen, Lagpa, the head chef, and his team of assistants are busy stacking the furnaces. In the center of Lagpa's kitchen are two enormous vats, and inside is today's lunch. Leading a frugal existence, monks rely on the most basic of meals, unless food is donated by the public. Previous generations would have survived on tsampa alone. But as Tibet slowly modernizes, more exotic food can be brought in. Tonight's meal of cabbage and dough balls is considered a luxury. It is common for cooks like Lagpa to work in the monastery all their life. When the time eventually comes for a change, the old chef must pray to the oven deity to allow his retirement. And the new chef must burn incense as an offering to gain its blessing. The Sandra family are running an operation on a much smaller scale than Lakpa's kitchen. And instead of cabbage and dough balls, they need barley, water and a little yeast. They're making chang, or barley wine. Throughout Tibet, families such as the Sandras will make their own, and all you need is a warm, dry part of your home to store it in. 48 hours later, and the barley has fermented and is known as lum. It can be fried off with a little oil and sugar and eaten as a snack. Or, if you have a little more patience, sealed with water in an airtight container and left to mature for a couple of weeks. It's polite to drink 3 cups of wine. Of course, chang is only drunk for its fabled healing properties. And according to legend, it's even popular with the Yeti, who often comes down from the mountains in search of it. Although maybe he just likes a good drink too. The elusive Yeti is said to roam freely throughout the Tibetan Himalayas, blending seamlessly into these snowy peaks. But here, in the mountains of the southwest county of Ningchi, he would be a little easier to spot. Over millennia, the mighty Yarlung Zhangbo River has carved a passage through the Himalayan mountains, linking Tibet to the Asian subcontinent. This allows the annual monsoon weather to pour in, creating this lush coniferous forest. With its high peaks and deep tree-lined valleys, this remote area has become known as the Switzerland of Tibet, and was largely unexplored by outsiders until the late 1990s. Here, on the fringes of the calm waters of the heavenly lake, hidden in the deep undergrowth, lives one of Tibet's most treasured delicacies. Roaming free, feasting on wild plants and herbs, the Tibetan black pig. These wild pigs can only be found in this small pocket of Tibet. But what makes these pigs special is not that they live in one of the last unadulterated forests on the planet, but what they eat. They've developed a ravenous appetite for fruits and herbs, especially the sapodilla, or as it's locally known, the ginseng fruit. Although the fruit is unrelated to the ginseng herb, these pigs have nevertheless become known throughout Tibet as the ginseng pig. This has caused some Tibetans to believe their fragrant-smelling meat is not only extremely nutritious, but also contains medicinal properties. They've lived side by side with humans for generations. It's hard not to, when they're always being thrown tasty treats. But alas, for these picky porkers, it's not the milk of human kindness. There are ulterior motives. Bhima and his son Ishi need to build up their store of meat to see them through the winter. Rendered helpless, this pig must think it's all over. But she's not for the slaughter yet. First, they must wash away any evil spirits or bad luck. And because all water in Tibet is considered holy, the river is the ideal spot. She doesn't enjoy the first and last bath of her short life. Hoisted back onto the pole, she begins her upside-down journey all the way back to the yard. With prayers offered and scrub skin, it's now time to get their instruments ready. Following Buddhist teachings, they make sure the animal suffers as little pain as possible. Like the nomads on the plateau, these farmers choose to suffocate their animals. Removing the thick, coarse black hair from a pig is surprisingly easy, as long as you know what you're doing. Ishi and his father pour scalding hot water over the hair and scrape. They must work quickly and methodically. This is Ishi's grandfather. He's 83 years old. He has long since passed such duties on to his son. Still, he's there to oversee the job. Hot water is used to sterilize the animal. Ishi watches closely. He must learn how to clean a pig correctly. Eating contaminated meat can have dire consequences. Ginseng pig is a delicacy much sought after throughout Tibet. Just the thought of it entices Ishi's grandfather from his bedroom. With a sumptuous meal in mind, even he now pitches in with preparations. The nomads on the plain only have salt and sampa to cook with. Here, there is a little more choice. Wild onions, rice, pepper and mersha are added to this variation of blood sausages. And while his wife and son stuff the intestines, Bhima can finish the job he started. Tibetan black pig is seen as a delicacy, served in the finest restaurants from Lhasa to Beijing. Here, in these remote mountains, this meat, dried and salted, will keep Bhima and his family from starving throughout the harsh winter ahead. At mealtimes, families and friends eat off a communal plate. They pass a carving knife around and are unafraid to dig in with their hands. For everyone, especially the grandfather, it's been well worth the wait. With his daughter-in-law on hand to serve butter tea, what more could an old man want? Even the grease and oil from the food makes a fine skin salve. Outside, pigs venture from their forest hideout. One scouts the yard. oblivious to his destiny. This little fellow lives to see another day. But these tranquil and idyllic mountain slopes betray a truth about Tibet. Throughout the land, the forces of modernization are affecting how people eat. Nowhere more than in the restaurants of Lhasa. Lhasa is a vibrant melting pot of people, cultures and cuisines. The capital, in stark contrast to the rest of Tibet, has a diverse range of food on offer all year round. Indian, Chinese, Nepalese, even an American burger can all be found within walking distance of each other. While the city is rapidly modernizing, it still has its old hidden gems. This ramshackle building, tucked away in the southeastern corner of Parker Street, may look unimpressive from the outside, but looks can be deceptive. This is the world-famous Maki Amar restaurant. Today, diners come from all over the world to sample its cuisine. In fact, this Tibetan stalwart is so successful it now has 4 branches, 2 of which are in Beijing. Inside, the decor is sumptuous. Stunning religious embroidery, carvings and artifacts. Legend has it that this was a bar visited 300 years ago by the 6th Dalai Lama. He met a beautiful woman here, to whom he dedicated the poem Maki Amar, meaning pure lady. The kitchens in Tibetan restaurants are presided over by the much revered Maki, or master chefs. Basang studied for 7 years before he could assume the title of master chef. Today, he is making a Maki Amar speciality, balaboni. This spinach and cream dish is a firm favourite with vegetarians. Basang's assistant is left to add the final decorative touches. Luckily for him, he has another 6 years training left to get his piping perfect. Basang and his team are famous for taking the simplest ingredients Tibet has to offer and adding a touch of flair, more commonly found in the fine dining establishments of Europe. Salted beef is another of his specialities. He loads the pan with salt, fries the beef, finally adding Tibet's favourite ingredient, yak butter. At the last minute, he sprinkles some pickled radishes. It's the house speciality they've been waiting for. Maki Amar is open day and night. After sunset, it becomes the perfect spot for a romantic rendezvous amongst tourists and Lhasa's more affluent residents. Business here is booming, but it's not only Maki Amar that is benefiting from the influx of visitors and a growth in prosperity. Just streets away is a restaurant that specializes in Tibet court cuisine. Here, the clientele get an authentic taste of recipes from Tibet's royal past. This unusual dish, normally served on special occasions such as New Year, is called good luck sheep's head. Once the hair is singed off, the head is boiled for 40 minutes with shallots, garlic and pepper. Perhaps more appealing is this sweet rice dish, It's believed to not only nourish the lungs, but to work as an aphrodisiac. Unlike most Tibetan meals, the food in this restaurant is gloriously extravagant. And ornately decorated. Each of the 4 treasures is laid out on the table, and, as is the custom, everyone shares the carving knife. It's a decadent, hands-on feast. Sampa is so ingrained in their culture that even the most upmarket restaurants include it on the menu. A little is added to butter tea to make dough balls. It takes expertise to know exactly how much flour and tea is needed. This simple accompaniment is a ritual often shared amongst friends. As for the good luck sheep's head, you have to crack open the back of the skull to reach the delicacy inside. And no meal is complete without a round of butter tea. While eating in a restaurant like this is a luxury, only undertaken on a special occasion, many of Tibet's growing middle class, such as Drummer's family, are now able to enjoy buying fresh produce all year round. Throughout the city, modern supermarkets like this are springing up. Until very recently, produce was limited to what can be grown locally or be bought from passing traders. But old habits die hard. Nobody buys without touching, smelling and tasting first, even here. Produce quality can vary wildly, so mothers teach their children how to select the best. When Drummer was a young girl, markets like this were unheard of, and buying fresh food all year round was the preserve of the rich. Unlike restaurants, kitchens in the home are a place for women. Drummer's family can afford good food, utensils and modern appliances. But in Tibet, the old comes alongside the new. A brand new washing machine sits amongst rubble. These clam-shaped dumplings are called momos and are folded into different shapes depending on the occasion. They are popular throughout Tibet and are even the subject of an old maxim. If someone talks too much, people say, "Kama monga chintu," or "shut your mouth like a momo." Special meals in Tibet consist of many small dishes rather than one large main dish. Drummer has ingredients already prepped. She can cook several dishes at once. Once the food is cooked and laid out on the table, the men appear from the woodwork. While the growing middle class in Lhasa are able to enjoy the benefits of trade with the outside world, people in the countryside are still living a more traditional life. Here, it could be a different century. It's late September on the plateau. Tibet's growing season only lasts 100 days, and during this period, the land receives over 80% of its annual rainfall. Barley is one of the few crops that can easily be grown in Tibet. The tools for harvesting are simple: a sickle, their hands, and to boost morale, their voices. The men join in. Once the grain has been beaten out, stalks will be dried and fed to cattle. Everyone pitches in to help, because this entire crop will have to be harvested by hand. But even here, far from the urban sprawl of Lhasa, modern technology is slowly making its presence felt. The techniques and methods used by these farmers have not changed much in over 200 years, until recently. It may not be state-of-the-art, but this tractor rips grass from the land in seconds. For these workers, it's a welcome relief. Like these farmers, many people in Tibet fight a daily battle to grow enough food or make enough money to feed their family. None more so than in the small village of Zunba. Bordered on three sides by steep, craggy mountains and surrounded by thin, stony earth, this desolate wasteland struggles to maintain only the most basic forms of life and vegetation. Today they are celebrating the descent of the Holy Spirit festival by burning pine branches in place of incense. Home to around 300 people, what is unique about Zunba is that it's the only fishing village in all of Tibet. In Tibet, fish is not commonly eaten because water is considered sacred, as is all that lives within it. The Nobu family are preparing a large meal. They're building a new home with the help of their neighbours and have promised them a feast in return. However, this isn't enough to feed everybody. Boats in Zunba are made out of yak skin. The hair has been removed and skin soaked to make it soft enough to be pierced by a needle. The hides are then bound onto a frame. This boat took 4 yak hides. Once the frame is complete, this remarkable craft is brushed down before a coat of rapeseed oil is applied. This will seal it and help keep the craft afloat. Every boy in the village is taught how to build the boat from a very early age. While most Tibetans will spend their entire life without admitting to have eaten a single fish, fishing has made this village one of the richest in the province. In the past, fish could only be found on the black market, sold under the pseudonym of summer radishes. Today, however, eating fish is starting to lose its stigma and is now discreetly bought and sold in the major cities. Tapping the base of the boat sends out vibrations to trick the fish into their nets. A single large mackerel will join them for dinner. There is no shortage of fish here, and they quickly fill up the net. This catch should keep everyone happy. Their vessels are so light and well constructed, they can be flipped and carried home to dry. Out of necessity, these villagers have adapted to their surroundings. With no land to grow crops or raise cattle, they were forced to turn to the river and ignore old customs. They have, however, created customs and rituals of their own. Before setting off on a large fishing expedition, the men of the village gather to perform a special ceremony. The boat dance. And every fisherman knows the moves. As the modern world inevitably encroaches on Tibetan villages like Zunba, their traditions and cultural distinctiveness may soon fade into the pages of history. And change may not just be limited to these fishermen. Wido Temple in Qinghai Province. These young Buddhist monks are being summoned to dinner. Traditionally, each family in Tibet would have sent at least one son to a monastery. While the practice is dying out, monks still account for over a quarter of the Tibetan population. And for these students, the path to enlightenment starts at a young age. A typical day in this monastery will consist of memorizing Buddhist scripture and debating the different interpretations of how to reach enlightenment. But while they are concealed behind these stone walls, the fabric of Tibet is changing around them. As they eat simple meals, new roads and railways deliver a previously unthinkable variety of goods and products to one of the remotest places on Earth. Previous generations had to struggle and adapt to life in a land where it was difficult to cultivate the simplest crops. But these boys will grow up in a very different Tibet. Now people travel from all corners of the globe to visit one of the last unspoiled places on Earth. And in doing so, change it in untold ways. The Tibetan people have forged a simple but unique culinary culture from a great and at times inhospitable land. Whether they can retain it in the face of the pressures of the 21st century is another story.